and I gave 10 urine specimens, had 10 weigh-ins, 10 blood pressure checks, 9 Doppler exams, and 1 ultrasound exam. I gave 7 vacutainers of blood, had 1 glucose tolerance test, and was the lucky recipient of 4 vaginal and cervical exams. Do these sound like things that should happen to a normal, healthy woman? I do not think so. My normal hospital delivery went something like this. After being one of the lucky few with spontaneous membrane rupture, I arrived at the hospital to give a urine sample, have my blood drawn, and my blood pressure checked. I was harnessed to external fetal monitoring devices, and then my doctor came in to perform about a 10-minute cervical exam. During that time, he confirmed that, yeah, my water had broken, like I didn't already know that, and he inserted a fetal monitoring device, an internal fetal monitoring device. My blood pressure was checked throughout the night at 15-minute intervals. An IV was inserted for the administration of electrolytes and Pitocin, and I received epidural anesthesia. Again, I was lucky in that I got away with only 2 cervical exams before the yelling began. Push, push, push. They yelled at me for 2.5 hours. You need to push harder. I had 3 people administering fundal pressure. This is the hardest part. And an episiotomy that took 6 months to heal. At no point during my pregnancy or during the administration of these interventions was I supplied with informed consent regarding what I now know to be often unnecessary and extremely painful procedures. After 2 long hours of pushing, my baby ended up being manually pulled from my body. He watched the whole thing wide-eyed and never uttered a sound. When our eyes finally met for the first time, he just looked all the way into my soul, knowing that the experience would eventually turn my world upside down. Sadly, in addition to the things which happened to me, all too many women and babies also experience the horror of forceps, vacuum extraction, or cesarean section. Hospitals are filled with the things which we have been culturally conditioned to associate with birth, and these are frightening things. Sharp, cold objects that can penetrate our bodies, mercilessly accost our unborn, and instill the spirit of fear into the core of our beings. These items associated with mechanized birth harm us not only physically and emotionally, but they sever our spiritual connection to our inner and ancient wisdom. Studies have shown that there is a significantly greater incidence of postpartum depression in women who have had a highly mechanized birth experience. The depression is usually deeper and longer lasting, and I have been there. I had horrible images in my head and horrible thoughts about myself. I spiraled into a depression that became so severe that I almost ruined my marriage and thought often of taking my life. I often ask myself, does God really intend for modern birth to be the invasive, mechanized procedure that it has become? After the atoning sacrifice of the Savior, does womankind still deserve this suffering and sorrow? And even if you're not Christian, you can ask yourself, as the crowning glory of creation or evolution, why do we have so little faith in our bodies and our wisdom to continually turn to professionals for assistance in bringing forth our young? My daughter's birth is so far from that standard of normal, but looking back, the way she was born seems so normal. I labored peacefully and virtually painlessly in my home. My husband was close by. I moved around freely as often as my body dictated. I birthed in an upright position. And how peaceful Daphne's birth must have been to her, going from the loving arms of her Father in heaven through my body to the loving, albeit uncertain, arms of her Father on earth. To me, Daphne's birth represents faith in its purest and simplest form. Faith that birth is as safe as life gets. Many of us know a woman by the name of Mary Seaver who recently wrote that The more people present in an earthly way, the more the spirit withdraws and the less beautiful the experience can be. Many people feel that they have a right to be present by virtue of employment or relationship and do not realize this. To them, a baby being born is but a medical event that is encircled by blood and amniotic fluid and emergency, but a baby is a spiritual being becoming a physical being. Their spirituality is more present at this time than their physicality, and thus their passage into life needs to be gentle, so they are not crushed spiritually in the process. And that's the end of Mary's quote. The song I heard last Saturday made me ponder deeply about the spiritual crushing of women and babies. And again, I'll repeat part of the song. Across my home has grown the shadow of a cruel and senseless hand, though in some strong hearts the love and truth remain. And it has taken me this distance and a woman's smile to learn that my heart remains among them, and to them I must return. It is time we cast away the shadow of the cruel and senseless hand of unfounded obstetric practices and reclaim birth as the peaceful, intimate, spiritual experience it should be. We must share of our knowledge and experiences often. We must guide families to the sources of truth and away from mainstream bookstore shelves. People may balk and criticize, but we must not give up, shut up, let up, or slow down. It is a long way we have to come, and it will be slow. But as we share line upon line, precept upon precept, with love and faith, people will begin to hear us. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to speak with you today as one of the strong hearts wherein the love and truth remain. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
I look at society and I see millions of Amandas who are working their careers, putting their children in daycare, and have spent years working on their degrees. And if Amanda could do it, so can all those other women in making this shift. You may wonder why I have this American flag here and some constitutions on my table. The reason why is because in America, despite all of our flaws and faults and problems, we have the freedom to have as many children as we want. If you haven't traveled the world, you don't understand that in certain countries you can have one child. If you try to have more, they will force you to be sterilized. They will force you to have an abortion. This is happening right now today in our world. What we have learned who have gotten into unassisted natural birth is that birth is joyful. These babies bring us joy, and we want lots of them, and we're not going to apologize for that, because we believe that this is the heart and the soul of being a person, is to put our personhood into another little being. And so I am grateful for my freedoms in America to have as many children as I want. I have 4, and I'd like to have a lot more. And I'm grateful for the Constitution, even though we have gotten away from the heart of the Constitution. The essence of it is simply freedom. And so I'm grateful to be an American, and I hope that we can all treasure what we have in being citizens of America. And that's all I have to say on that, and let's